Okay. Oh, I gotta turn my music off. There we go. This is an etymology class. The only purpose is to read an entry. It is not to, there's like one little bit of information I give in addition so that we can figure out why we sometimes need to get to etymology and how it helps us. But the rest is for a different class and a different purpose. And for the most part, we have a couple people who are really brand new, and we have most people felt like they were a 2 or a 3, and all the way to a 4. So this ought to be really interesting. My biggest thing is this: someone Can Do Kids Academy. If you haven't hooked up with her information yet, it's an excellent source. But she just posted this, and it is what I live by. And Michelle was one of the first people that taught me the value in asking questions, because I've always been the person that sits back and hangs back and waits for someone to ask a question, and I hope my question gets answered. But I've since changed that as I've gone through classes, because it is the 25 people who know the answer aren't nearly as interesting as the 1 or 2 who don't. It's not the error that's useful, but the reasons behind the confusion, the reasons that, when explored, they enhance the entire group's understanding, not just of the content, but how best to teach it. And that's how you get light bulb moments. It's how you deepen everyone's perspective, and you elicit not just the right answer, but often a shift in thinking. So that's the way that this learns. And every time somebody else asked a question, I'd be like, oh, great, I've just learned it. Well, I've learned how to ask questions myself now. This is the goals of the class are to learn a few terms, read a basic etymology entry that's on Etym Online, and identify the PIE root, find our most recent etymon where we get our spelling from, and make not the most recent, but oftentimes we get a different spelling than the history. Make a timeline of a couple of entries. We'll figure out which of those maroon links that we should be clicking on, and maybe sometimes times when we can ignore them. Choose embedded links. Oh, I said that one. Words to watch for in an entry. There's some important words that come up that are going to help indicate that it may not be exactly that lineage. So we need to be watching for those, and be able to accept at times the etymology is unclear, or the etymology is super clear, but we can't figure it out. Right? It happens. That's just the way it's going to be. And this is the fun part. We get to meet people from around the world, and I hope that you end up learning even more. So, any questions before we start? Okay. I'm going to use slideshow. So tell me if this is too big, or if there are parts you think are hidden and can't see. Does it look good? Okay, perfect. I only get to see a few of you in my screen, so please do not assume I can see you. I need to just unmute and holler. I will not see the little hand raised thingy very often, because like I said, I can only see a couple squares at a time. But I'm pretty flexible. If you have a question, if I think it's something I'm going to answer later, I'll let you know. But otherwise, I'd rather the question in the moment. Terms. We have, what are some terms that we have? Oh, there we go. Etymology is the facts of the origin and the development of a word. The etymology comes from facts, comes from artifacts, any written testament for the word. In etym, E-T-Y-M, means true sense, and log is word, reason, or study. So etymology is the true sense of a word. What is a root? This is a big difference between a root and a base element. A root is the etymological ancestor of the word. That seed, that's why I have that image there. It's the seed that bore all different words. all different, possibly all different, sometimes only one, but it's the very final product, the first product. What's PIE? We call it pi. It's an hypothetical reconstructed ancestral language from the Indo-European family. Reconstructed means it was not spelled in a place they can get it from. They didn't tap it out on a stone, they didn't write it, but we have to guess. This is 5,500 years ago. It's unattested. So what you'll find on a pi, when they give you pi, they will put an asterisk in front of it. And that always, even if it's not pi, if you see an asterisk, it means that spelling has been reconstructed, estimated, guesstimated based on a lot of information from linguists. Etymon, what is that? An etymon are all the pieces in between the root and the current one. So everything, it's all the places we got the word from, all different etymons. It's a linguistic form from which later forms derive, and that's its etymon. An immediate etymon is the one closest to our modern English day spelling, and the ulterior etymon is the furthest away from the English spelling, which the denotation and the spelling derive. So ulterior is not the pi root, because that is unattested, and we might have gotten our spelling from a little bit closer. It's farthest away from our current, but it's not as far back as the pi. It is not an ancestral root, but we got our denotation, which is the meaning of the word, and our spelling. This is just a map of where the Indo-European migration happened. So if you kind of see it in the center, they all migrated out. It's great to see the year, before the Common Era. So, and then how it just spread around. This is a simplified map of Proto-Indo-European. It's given us the Indo-Iranian language, Hellenic, Celtic, Italian, Italic, Balto-Slavic, and Germanic languages, which then form more languages coming down. This is a little bit more intimate with more information, and also gives you the years. So I kind of like that one. And he highlighted the Germanic green going down to modern English, and the Latin going to Spanish. Doesn't talk about the influences there, but that's where the language is stemmed from. These two videos are hilariously different. I just am intrigued by them. If you want to know more about the people and the migration, click on this guy. I'll just do it for a second.
Who were the Proto-Indo-Europeans?
So he tells us all about the Proto-Indo-Europeans. This guy, standing on a mountain, probably in Montana somewhere, someplace. He's so funny to me. But he just gives you a great information about Indo-European languages. There's a point, if you actually go on YouTube and you look on the right-hand side of his screen, of the actual video screen, he will give you some places where he has studied, people he follows if you want to learn more. But then outside of the video, when you're on YouTube, you can click chapters or little minute links. And there's one where he talks about, and it caught my eye because it said something like, basically, we don't get our writing system from them, from these languages. And I was like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? And he explains it really well. So I thought that would be a good one.
Who were the Proto-Indo-Europeans?
I hit that button, I wasn't supposed to. And this is just a really fun, standing out in the middle of winter. No, not going to happen.
Hi, I'm Old Norse Specialist Dr. Jackson Crawford. So to begin with, my qualification.
Two totally different types of people giving you this historical information, and I just think they're lovely to watch. A few more terms: attested and attestation. So this is one of those words I absolutely love to talk about, because attested. you've got your stress here. And then you have attestation, and it doesn't sound like the same word, but obviously the spelling is coming from the same place. So it's one of those highlights of our language, of our spelling. That's a good one to bring in if you're going to talk to the people about structure word inquiry. Sometimes it's good to find words where you don't think they came from the same source. Provide or serve as clear evidence of a spelling, in this case. Watch for an asterisk. That will indicate an unattested spelling. So English spelling will not come from those, because our spelling has to come from a place where we can prove the spelling from another language or from wherever it came from. What is a base element? This is the words you're going to use most often. A base is referring to any part of a word seen as a unit where an operation can be applied, possibly adding an affix. The base carries the sense of a stepping. I don't think than on was correct. A stepping, then on which one steps or stands. I think the word than needs to go. I mistyped that one. On something on which one steps or stands. So imagine a pedestal where something can sit on it, right? That's a good thing to think of. According to Sue Hegland in her book, she says a base element is a structural unit that forms a foundation for the word's spelling and meaning. A base element carries orthographic denotation. Whoops, I went ahead, clicking the other button. Unfortunately, in many resources, people call this root all the time, but that more precise term needs to be base or base element. So in this word play, that is the base element. A free base is a minimal grammatical unit which can be used as a word without the need for further morphological modifying. So a base stands on its own. It does not need, a free base stands on its own. It does not need an affix. Free carries the sense of exempt from and not in bondage. A bound base is opposed to a free base, right? It's different, it's opposite. Where free stands on its own, it doesn't have anything bonded to it. Bound means something's tied up with bonds. It's there, it's an important piece, but we can't use it in English without at least one affix. So we just had Maggie join us. Hi, Maggie. Hi.
Good morning. Sorry I'm late.
No worries. Just want to let you know that we are recording this, and I'll have it available for probably 4 or 5 days after the session, so you can go back and see what you were. Just a few minutes, you only missed a couple little things. Yep, that way, a couple of people have to slide out, they can do that.
Thank you.
Okay, so here we go. So we're going to dissect an entry, and we're going to look at the word evidence. It's a perfect one to look at because it will give us exactly what we're looking for, which is evidence. You know, I love this word. Oh, hold on. There we go. So if you went to Etym it would look like this. To me, it's a paragraph. It's very overwhelming. We can read it. I'm not going to take time to read it to you. But what do we do with this big paragraph as you know, as it comes through? Besides that, we then have to click evident, and we have to come up with another one. So this, to me, I don't even want to try. I wouldn't call it lazy. I just get overwhelmed with too many words all at once. So I had to figure out a different way to do it. But let's just talk about how he sets up an entry. Taking the same thing. If there's a date, it's the date that it entered into English. And then he'll give us the meaning as it came into English. It might have evolved if you went to a dictionary, a current dictionary, it may have evolved since then. But at that time, evidence came in the 1300s, and it said appearance from which inferences may be drawn. Okay, I could see that. We still have that sense in there. And from there, we go with what are the ancestors? Where did it come from? So every time you see the word from, that's a lineage, that's a piece of its history. There's a lot of stuff in between that I didn't highlight. I could highlight the whole thing, but I'm really looking at from Old French, from late Latin proof, and in classical Latin it meant distinction. So it's like you have to read that as it meant distinction, vivid presentation, clearness. In rhetoric, it came from a stem of Latin evidence and obvious and apparent, and then we have to go see evident. What you don't see here is a pyroot. And the reason you don't see a pyroot is because it came from a different word, and we have to go to that word to go see further back. And then anything down here is additional information. Sometimes that's really cool stuff, and it helps us learn something, and sometimes it doesn't. It's just, it grew different senses after it came into English. But we have to go to see evident before we are finished with this word. So if we take a look at the anatomy of this word, we're going to get no date entered. Well, maybe it's over in the middle. I didn't see it right away. It says plain. It came in as plainly seen or perceived, manifest, obvious, late 14th century. I don't know why sometimes the date is not in the beginning or sometimes absent, but that's okay if it is. You will not always see a date. And the meaning as it came into English, and then its ancestry. That also took a lineage through French, and then before that Latin, and then you have all the other stuff. And what we're looking for is the pyroot, because once you see the pyroot, you have to go backwards to find where we got the modern spelling from. Because pyroot has that asterisk, it wasn't spelled. The very next place was Latin's videre, which was spelled because there's no asterisk, so you know we got it from there. My favorite method is to do it with bullet points. I take the same entry, I copy and paste it, and then I push the bullet points marker, you know, that little thing that makes bullet points. And every time I see from, I put my cursor in front of from, and I push the enter or the return button, and I know now that one comes from French. Then evidence from Latin. I didn't separate how it was in classical to how it was in, you know, any other thing, because it's only giving me one etymon that had different senses as it went through. From the stem of Latin, obvious and apparent. Sorry, this is still evidence. And then we have to go see evident. And then I often take that extra information and I make it a different size, and I push it away because this is digestible to me. I can look at this in small pieces and I have an easier time with it. When I'm done, I have to go see evident. So I'll go see evident. And I do the same thing. I push it in when I feel like this says directly from Latin, evidentum. It's nominative, meaning if you looked it up in an etymological dictionary, it would be, you'd look up evidens. It meant perceptible, clear, obvious, and apparent. And that was built from ex, which means out and fully, and videntem. And you can see the E for X, and the videntem is right here. So I feel like these two were directly building this word. So I push them in a little bit. From that, this videntem came from videre, to see. And it isn't going to matter if you have all the bullet points down the edge. This is just what I do to help me, and I don't know if I'm 100% accurate on that. I feel like I am. This came from this. It's how I can read it and what it tells me and how I find what I'm supposed to find. Got the pi root. Now I know we're done. I'm going to go choosing the oldest root before pi would be Widere to see. And now I highlight and I bold all the information that I want. So we can use Widere to see, and the EX, we just use the E at this point. If you want information about that EX and how the X is sometimes there and sometimes not, you have to go check that. Helly, go ahead.
If you were to analyze that word, so would be E would be the prefix and VID the bound base and ENT the suffix?
Oh, close, yes. E plus VIDE,
E.
which got removed when you added the vowel suffix ENT.
So there is no suffix in the word. So it would be just
Yes.
the bound base would be VIDENT.
Hold on, let me put it down for you. That would be, it would end up being E plus
VID.
plus ENT.
Okay.
Now, where did that E go?
Okay. Yes.
Because you're adding a vowel suffix.
Yeah. So that's what I was saying in the beginning. Okay.
Oh,
Okay. Perfect. Okay.
I just didn't put the extra E.
Yeah. No, I actually said VID. Okay, but so it's VIDE, and then you remove the E because you are adding the vowel suffix. Okay.
Correct.
That makes sense.
And the reason for this E is because this ends, the last two letters, if we didn't have it, it would be VID, and this would be a vowel, a single vowel, followed by a single consonant. Uses the system that if you're adding a vowel suffix, you would double that D. And because we can find lots of words without doubling the D, we know for certain that the E is there. It's a canceller.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So
Thank
we
you,
have
Dean.
that. Yep. Oops, I gotta go through that thing. Hold on. There we go. And then I have this little caveat to the left that even though whenever I see Old French, I stop. I've learned that a lot of times when it goes through Old French, the spelling came more from French than it did these other things. And while we know this lineage, our spelling might still have come directly from Evident. But I'll talk about it a little bit later because you'll see some examples where we can find, how do you find more words that might be using we today, and there's a little more investigation there. So another way to do this is using a timeline, and I watched Lynn Anderson and Ann Whiting's recent conference that they did, and they did evidence, like, or not evidence, but they did a different word, but they use this timeline method. And what they do is they write out index cards. See if I can show you these. They go through them, and they'd say, I'll put it on an index card and put that on your floor. Write the next etymon, just sort of like what we did with the bullet points, but they put them on physical cards. It's a good idea to do that because it does help you put it in your mind. And then you lay them on the floor in a timeline. And I'll show you what it looks like when we're done. Helly, did you have a question?
Oh, sorry, I forgot to lower my hand.
Oh, okay. Good. Well, I didn't know it would actually give me a little bubble at the on the face of my screen because I couldn't see you. So perfect. And go ahead and also just unmute. I'm good with that. There we go. Whoops, why is it not working? There we go. Okay. Can you see my green screen now? Okay. So if you are interested in their work, they have some beautiful field guides and they ship around the world. That is called Caught in the Spell of Words. If you want to read some beautiful work about structure word inquiry, I highly recommend their things. This is what their field guides look like. They're small, but they're packed with information. And you do need to know a little bit about words, structure word inquiry in order to go through them, but I think this will help a lot. Myself and Dr. Squires are in the middle of writing a book for working with, so we're trying to get classrooms to use more structure word inquiry. And so this is one of the words we have in our book, and then this is a page from that. So you start with your current word, evidence, and this arrow on the left is indicating while it's at the bottom of our timeline, we're working backwards to find out where it came from. So Old French, those are those bullet points. From late Latin first, then from evidentum and evidens, clear and obvious. The ex, it just goes over there. And then videntem and videns, and finally the Latin and the pi root. And I will take you through on the next slide to show you where I picked up each of those pieces of information. The ancestral root would be your pi root, right? It's the furthest away before it was a spelled word. Ulterior etymon is what they're calling the furthest away from our modern spelling, but it was spelled and we got our denotation from that. And immediate etymon is the closest relative, which is spelled exactly. From French, we pulled it right on in. We got the ence suffix from French, so there's no surprise that it looks exactly as it did in French. So here's how you make the timeline. I started with my bullet pointing. The word goes at the bottom, and everything starts to, all the arrows are going to start going up. From French was my next bullet point. From late Latin, I didn't bother putting all that other information about how it was in classical and in rhetoric and yada yada. I just don't feel like that's telling me the spelling, but it is history, and it is showing me that it had different senses as it evolved, but the spelling, where did that come from? So now we're on to the stem of Latin, evidens, and that's where we have to go see evidence. So we have to put that next bullet pointed box in, and we can clearly see that that is the same thing, evidens, right there in evidentum. From videm and videns, the nominative, where did that come from? From the present participle of videre. Oh, that dog is cute. I can see it. The dog said she wants what you have. And the pi root, we can see that. So where do we get videre and visus from? Well, then you'd want to go to the Latin dictionary. There's the link there. And you put videre, which was in our entry, right? The etymon line told us videre. So I put that in there, and it brings up this gray box, and that has the appearance to be seen. It's still about seeing, so I know I've got the right one. It looks like this. There were 4 parts, principal parts in Latin. English did not use their first or third if they have them. They don't always have 4. Sometimes they have 2 or 3, but you'll start to recognize the suffixes and start to see it. But there's always the infinitive, and not always, I'm pretty sure there's always an infinitive, but there's always a nominative. That's the first one. The second one is infinitive. The third one is really useless to us. And then the fourth one, supine. So nominative is the one you want to look up in a Latin dictionary if you actually have a Latin dictionary. So we take the second, videre, and the fourth, visus. We seek out the suffixes that Latin used and we remove them. So that leaves us with VID, and we are going to put the E back on. It's noted Y at the bottom. And it leaves us with VIS, and we're going to put the E back on again. And those are both bound bases in English. So the E goes on because of the last two letters being single vowel, single consonant. Oh, I mixed up my colors, didn't I? That's funny. Blue is usually consonants, red is vowels. Another word we're going to look at is instruction. So do you have any questions before we move to that one? Okay, and this is where I'm kind of hoping, I know that was quick, but maybe somebody's going to feel brave enough to answer a few questions on this one. We're going to look at the anatomy again. So what is the very first C1400 mean? What would you call that? Go ahead and answer. Yeah, you have to unmute though.
That's when the word first came into English.
Yes, right. Date entered into English. What's the next thing we're going to see?
The meaning when it came into English.
Yep. And from there, we're going to see all that history. And from is our best friend. The word from tells us lots of things. And again, I struggle, even as many times I've done this, this is a blur to me. So I'm going to go right probably to the next one. Pi root is at the end. What's important about pi root is it's not spelled. So we go right in front of that and we find struere. You might already recognize the ERE on struere and begin to be able to kind of cover that up and see STRU. And that's interesting. This is the pi root system, or the bullet point method. This is a different timeline. So there's obviously more than one way to make a timeline. And for some people, this one might be more interesting. It's a sideways timeline. So you see where it came from, struere. It went up into Latin instruere, kind of became mushed together as an instrument. Instru was kind of there. Instructionum, an array. Old French, instruction. Modern French looks exactly like the way we spell the word instruction. And then you just have all the ways that it evolved, even with the denotation. So what I like to do then is put into etymon line that Latin STRUERE. It will then bring up words that are using it. And what you are looking for, so you have to be a little careful. Let's say you put in a spelling that sort of ends up being, for some reason, it ends up being close to an English word, like investigate. If I look up investigate, I think that's on one of these. Oh, like instrument. See how I must have been looking up instrument at some point when I took a photo of this? And anytime the word instrument is in the entry, it's going to show up. But you can tell if you look at these three highlights, there's no plus sign there, right? Those are just pieces of the sentence. What you're looking for is a plus struere, or the struere in the with the denotation, and it's going to have the word from prior to it somewhere. So now you can clearly see all these words came from struere. There are 15 entries. It will tell you how many. And I only have, I don't know, a smattering of them. Destruction, construe, instrument, instruct. I'm already noticing STRUCT and STRU or UE. There are those spellings and they're not identical. So they would come from that Latin 4 principal parts where they got spelled differently. But another word that came up was destroy, STROY. And I'm really curious, is there now an STROY spelling, or is destroy its own free base element? It's clear that it came from Struere, and it's clear it has the DE coming, it was built with the DE. It's not clear that it comes off in English. It is clear that it was built with DE plus STRUERE. And then I can go to Old French at the top, and I can look further at, oh, I did already put that on there. So there's the parts that doesn't line up with Stroy. But what I can see is the different spellings as it came in to French. None of those look like STROY, but I am seeing an EN that might come off, possibly an IRE. I don't know enough about those languages, that language. I believe that if you looked at the beginning, it's the 12th century, so that's when it came in, as the English spelling was those first two boxes, the first box had two different spellings. And if you take the EN off, you're looking closer to our STROY. Maybe we had the OI sound there. Don't really know why. I don't actually see where the English got STROY. So I would not take this apart any further. It would be its own free base word. I cannot find a way to take them apart. When I go to word searcher and I look for words that have STROY, these are the only ones in there. So I have no proof. I have no other words where STROY came off. Go ahead, Haley.
So
Am
D is not a prefix in that one?
in this word, in English, I don't believe it is. Let's put it this way. I don't have proof that it is. This is the
Okay.
hard part about SWI, that I need to have evidence and I cannot find it. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It means I can't find it. So I cannot take that apart. If you can find out later that it does, you can find other words that use STROY as a base and a different prefix, or as a base with another suffix. You can let me know your evidence and I might change my mind, right? But for me, I am not able to take this any further than destroy. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you. Can you go back to the last slide?
Yes. That one.
Yes, with the word instrument. Okay, so I can see that all these words you have the bound base struct, but instrument, how do you make a word sum of that one? Like in plus struct? I don't know.
Hey, let me type it out. Let me make sure I didn't already do that. I did not do that. So good. All right, I will type them out right here. Let me just get a new slide. Whoops. I don't want that guy on there. How did he get in there? That comes from a whole different project. There we go. Okay. So we had instrument, and the other one I saw was construe. Did you see this guy was struct. That guy is struct.
We
Like,
can't see your screen.
Oh, well, that does help if you would see my screen. Hold on. Sorry. All right. So this guy is struct, that guy is struct, STRUCT on all of these. And then there's STRUE and STRUMENT. Okay, so that's where we're at, and we're looking at those, and you're wanting to look at instrument. And you're going to have to look at construe at the same time. So if we took instrument, first of all, before we do that, we need to look at this again. Do you see STRUERE from Latin? That is important. So the four principal parts were STRUERE, and structus. So I can take those parts off. Those things I put in parentheses are Latin suffixes. And that's an entire kind of a class. You should definitely take that if you haven't taken it yet. But I already have proof. If I box my base, I have clear proof that that is a piece right there. And I can do it again right down there. So with instrument, if I can get it to let me type, why isn't it typing? There it is. IN plus STRU plus MENT.
Okay.
This one is CON plus STRU plus, well, I want to do maybe not an E, but what we do in English, I don't know if I would make it a plus E. I would have to just do that. I don't know how I would put that in there because English,
Would an E be an orthographic marker in there?
yes, it is, because English doesn't end in a U.
Yes.
Yep. This would, if I made it an E here, this would not cause me to lose that E. So I don't think there's an E on the end of stru. And it doesn't have, it ends in a vowel. It doesn't end in a consonant. So I wouldn't need to stop it. But construe would put the E back on because of that. I just didn't know if I was going to make it a plus or not. And I wouldn't make it a plus because it's an orthographic marker. It's not a suffix E.
Exactly.
You see it?
Okay.
That
So
help?
in that case, would you put the orthographic marker in parentheses? Is that the right way to do it?
You know, I don't actually know. It's the first time I've run across typing it. So I don't know.
Well,
Maybe
I don't know.
this.
We're learning.
Yeah, I'm learning that, you know, there's not, I have no idea. I've never typed that one. Maybe it's that. And then at times there are, what do they call? There is a little term, but it's like a two-step, right? So this step 2, maybe we could call it step 2. Step 2 is in English, we know that English words don't end with a U. So we would put the E back on.
So you might put an asterisk at the beginning of step 1 to let people know that it's not complete.
Right. That's a possibility to do it like that too. I feel much more confident in doing it.
But you
Whoops.
know what? I wonder if that is an etymological marker, maybe.
Well, not an etymological. I would say morphological marker because we don't end.
Yes.
I would rather see this in parentheses, but I'm actually going to have to ask on that. Why? How would you show the word sum?
Yeah.
Because the E is there simply for not letting an English word end in E because we wouldn't want, or sorry, a U, we wouldn't want that U to double.
Yes.
But how to show it is interesting.
Yes, for sure.
I think that makes sense to put it in those parentheses. It makes sense to me.
Yeah, a lot of times parentheses is reserved for that consonant that doubled. But in this case, you can see nothing doubled. So I feel like that, to me, I'm more comfortable with this one. But I'm going to find out what other people think. I'll put that online on and see what people see. Like on the Facebook group, I'm going to put that out there and see what their thoughts are. Good. Excellent. I love that. I now have another question to ask. Okay, here is now the slideshow with that same timeline for destroy. Sorry. Oh, there you go. Paolo put in misconstrue. Yes, in the chat. And again, there's that putting an E makes so much sense there to do that. Okay. So on destroy, then you have Old French, where that came from, Modern French. Sometimes laying it out like this helps you. You're really just giving the smallest bits of information and you can really start to see the spelling consistencies in these or how they've changed slightly. And while we know it came from there, we're not able to, this is an example where we're going to use a free base as destroy versus anything, having to take it apart. And you're immediate. Now, what can you do with that information? Well, you can build webs that help you to organize the information. I could put struct in the word searcher and come up with all kinds of words with struct that relate back to this same denotation. And I had to make a separate one for the stru family. Whoops. And a third one for destroy. So if this was your family, like picnic, right? This would be your mom and dad. This is your dad's brother, and this is your dad's sister and their family. They're all sitting, they're all belong to the same family, but they're in their own little picnic table. And then, oops, I spelled instrumentalist wrong right there. But then if you are a whole different ball field over, somebody else's family is over there, and that's a whole different word. It has no relationship to this family. I have to fix that. I take off the ability for the spell check on my computer because it, with structured word inquiry, you don't want capital letters everywhere, and you often want word parts. So I have all these red lines, so I remove it, but every now and then I find out that I misspelled something.
Can I ask a question about the last slide?
This one?
Slide 30. How come the Old French is closer to modern English than modern French?
Yeah, either I messed it up, or so let's go back. Well, because he puts it actually came from Old French, and maybe it's the order he put this in. So the modern, maybe the modern French, the only thing I see is in Old French it was DESTRU, and in modern it's DE, they lose the S. So maybe in modern French, yeah. It's possible. I probably should ask him that when he puts something in parentheses, does that need to be represented here? Because it does seem different, but because of the order he put it in, that's where I put it. And I don't know how to say that, but I'm not that, I don't think those details are going to help me with the spelling as much as finding out it's related to struere, but I still can't take it apart. Do you know what I'm saying? That's almost like what by the time I'm done with it, what actually did I need to know? Don't really need to know all of this, but I do need to know that I can't take it apart.
Thank you.
And the vulgar Latin, I forgot to mention, when you see vulgar Latin, that's a language that was also not written down. I believe that was more for the peasants, and they tried not to educate them back then, so they didn't have them writing and being educated, but they still, their language influenced a lot of our spelling as well. But you'll see an asterisk every time in front of vulgar because it wasn't written down. Okay. Well, we are getting close to 10 o'clock and we still have several slides. So we are going to go beyond the 10. But if you can stay, great. If not, that's okay too. So now I want to talk about when etymology is less than clear or it's unclear. We always have to seek evidence from other modern day word sums. So in this one, the word was environment. And we found an immediate etymon from Old French, and we found an ancestral root, but it's of uncertain origin. So where we ended up with environment, let's go from the bottom. A state of being environed, C, environ. plus ment. So we go to environ, which is a current modern word as well, to surround, encircle, or encompass. From French, environner, from environ, which is roundabout. They're finding that environ came from en plus viron, a circle or a circuit. It also came from to veer, to turn. So it has this sense of to turn. It has this sense of circle, like your environment is what surrounds you, right? I want to know, I obviously VEER is not the current spelling. VIRE is looking close, but that's French, and I don't think we have French suffixes to take off, but I don't know. But my next closest is VIRON. That, do we use this word separated right here? Because I would like to take them apart because I see the separation in this Latin section. So is it environ or is it en plus viron? I shouldn't be saying them, I should be spelling them. But first I have to attempt to find modern words with VIRON. There is nothing in a dictionary for that word. There was nothing on Etymology with that word. And there are no entries in Word Searcher, but just VIRON. Every time I put that in the Word Searcher, I got all words that came with environ as the base. Not the base, but as the letters that were, any word that had VIRON also had EN in them. So if I go to those same sources and I look for environ, I did find it in a dictionary. I did find it in Etymology and in Word Searcher. Now, finding it as a modern word as a free base is not the most important, but the Etymology and the Word Searcher, those two are my most important to see if I can use it as a bound base, possibly even. So that meant I couldn't do anything with these without en. This would be another one. The base would be ENVIRON plus S. Go ahead.
Is she a widow? No, she's big. She's just sitting in her office.
Okay. Oops. So words to watch out for. Some entries have confusing histories or their histories are uncertain. So watch for words such as perhaps or uncertain or potentially, from, tentatively, but, apparently, or unknown origin. Those are just the ones I've come across. There may be more that he uses in his entries. So here's an example with position. Great information, but then you get down to the Pyrote and he says Watkins and Van Devon are two sources he uses quite often. He'll quote them. Tentatively identifies it from this place, and Van Devon identifies it from that place. So there's an uncertainty in the origin. Another thing to look at is I would not actually click, like we always say, click on anything that's bold. Well, I wouldn't in these because they're coming from unattested areas. I mean, I might for information, but I don't think it's going to help us with the current spelling to go see these three. This is a bit of a battle as to where did this word originate from? Which Pyrote did it come from? The actual spelling was pretty clear that it comes from ponere, which is to put in place, because that's right before pi, right there. That's where I would get my spelling from. But it might be fun just to read the history otherwise. So when I put this one in a timeline, I started with deposition. It was actually deep. I don't know how to say this, but this class was studying depositing or I guess it's deposition still. And it does have a relation to a court deposition because you are putting and placing something aside or away. So rocks that are being deposited someplace else is where this word, why it's being studied. And you can go through Old French, Latin, you can find it comes from ponere and positus. So positioning is coming from here. I don't know any PON words off the top of my head, but all kinds of words with position come from the same family. But then the pi root, I didn't know where to go with that, so I put both of them up there, potentially from one and the other. Accept uncertainty when it just is, but you might end up finding nuggets anyway. So a scarf, I don't know when it actually, where it came from, right? It's a band of silk. You can read it comes from Old French, escarpe, possibly. This is another spelling from Frankish, which was not written, Old Norse, medieval, Latin, regular Latin, unknown origin again. So I don't know where it really comes from, but lots of probablys, lots of perhapses, lots of unknowns. I might not have picked out those words had I not been searching for them. So there's not really much history on this word. It's just going to be a free base, which that's pretty easy. But what you also might find out is that it was ending in a P, but the OED points to the changing of an initial P to an F after liquids. So you get a liquid sound and you might change it to a F, right? That's just a very common thing. The next piece was not that important, but then this one talks about how you pluralize scarf and how we change the F to the V, modeling after the half and halves. So you get some more information there. Oh, the opponent. Thank you, Paula. An opponent. There we go. Clearly related to oppose. Yes, totally. Excellent. Good observations. I meant to put the word discuss here in italicized because I'm not asking you to discuss. I'm looking at this word from discuss, from discutere, from quatere. So looking up the word discuss, we found it came from this discutere, from to dash to pieces, strike and shake apart. We found that came from apart and quatere, to shake. Which of these am I going to go looking up? Because none of them have CUSS. Well, if I go look at quash, I just found it really, really cool. And this took me some time till it was huge and I went, oh, I don't know what to do. So I started with the bullet pointing and I saw, I've never seen him do 1 and 2, but basically it's a merger of 2 words, both from Middle English, but they came from unrelated Latin pieces. So while they look similar, they also had homographs and homophones in all these other languages, right? So this came from this is where pi root can be really helpful. This pi root comes from KES, to cut. This pi root came from KWET, to shape. So this is where you can go, oh, they're not, those parts weren't related if you were looking up other words. But in this particular case, I'm just looking at quash. It's not giving me much about CUSS. It's giving me some really clear QU and a C are pretty close relationship. You're going to see words get spelled like that. There's quasus, again, no spelling information came from here, but this was fun to take apart. And I'm not looking for quash to be my spelling. But I went through and I thought, well, let me go to the Latin dictionary and I'll look up CUSS. Well, what I was getting was a cushion or cowardly and faint-hearted. So that did not talk about how discuss is used with quash, which is to shake. So I looked up cutere, no results found for that. I went down to discutere and I did find some words. There's looking like discuss right there. Take off the US. It does have that shake violently. I looked up quatere, which was that quasus word from the previous slide, and that is to shake. So clearly ours came from discuss and cutere. So now I'm thinking, is my base DISCUSS? Because this is what I would get from here. But I am really comfortable taking CUSS off as my base element because I can find more words I just got to gather evidence. I can find more modern day words using CUSS as shake, or whatever that other term was, to the shake with violence or shake the quatere. I can find quatere on Adam Online. I can enter that again. I can get concussion, discussion, and percussion. They all come from to strike or shake. You can see it in there somewhere. I can put this in word searcher, and the 27 matches I get, most of them are families. So organize the words into lists and analyze word sums. Here's my discuss family. I already found the relationship. It's clearly related with quatere. Concuss was clearly related with quatere, and percussion is clearly related to quatere. But I'm also looking at this word focused. And I'm like, well, focus in on focus, right? We have, why isn't focused part of this family? Does anybody want to hazard a thought before we move forward? Why isn't focused going to be part of this family? Morphologically, etymologically, we could look it up.
I think focus is a free base. I think
Okay, with how many S's?
just one.
Yeah. If we took it apart, FO would have to be a prefix, and you'd have to have an etymological relationship, and we do not have an etymological relationship, and FO is not a prefix. If you are curious about a prefix, almost every time I look in Etym Online, if I put FO with a dash, I'm asking it to show me as a prefix. Or UN with a dash, it will give me what it knows about it as a prefix, or a word forming element is what he calls it. So that is not going to be it. But we do have, you're right, a free base focus word. The stress lands at the join. If I said focus, that kiss is the little bit of that stressed piece in that word. So it lands at the join where I would be adding a vowel suffix, which would cause that doubling of the final consonant. So it's not there as a base word. And that is it. So there's references. Do you have questions? We only went 10 minutes over. That wasn't too bad. All right. Did that help? Is there more? Is there something that you would have liked to have seen? Okay.
All good. Thank
Good.
you so much. Thank
Okay,
you
you're welcome.
for reaching out and getting my colleagues from my country and Zimbabwe to join us.
Yes, I appreciate that. I think that's so much fun.
Thank you.
Thank
Alrighty.
you. Thank
Can
you.
I'm sorry, before you go, can I ask one question? Can you tell us more about where do we, the spelling of the pi root? I understand that that is the root before it was a spelled word. So does the spelling that we give it now come from what we assume the pronunciation was? I'm just unclear on that.
So let me go back to one of these. Let me pick one. Okay, so what you're asking is where do we get this spelling from?
No, the pi root, so like the WEID.
We don't. I will never try to make that assumption or guess, because that is a huge study that linguists undertake, and they reconstruct it based on all kinds of things. And I don't actually know how they do it without hearing people speak. I don't know. These two guys might actually give you some of that answer.
Okay. But I
I
guess
don't
from your answer, what it sounds like is it really doesn't matter.
Not the pi root, no. In
Yeah.
essence, the pi root, that will help you when, like I said, when we got down to this one, if we were trying, let's say our study was not quash, but let's say our study was kasar and kasar. Well, look what we've got, kasar and kasar right here. They're spelled identically in Old French, but I'm seeing a different denotation for each of them. So if I were investigating this word, I would have to dig deeper to say, okay, where did the root originate? This one originated as cut, and this one originated as shake. So they're two separate words.
Okay.
Sometimes it helps to shake out which ones came from which word, or which ones are truly related. If you look at the word two, I have a really cool slide. Oh, where's it at? I think it's this one. I'll show you really quickly where pi can also help. Let me go till I can find this slide. So when you are looking at this one, we went to the pi root. Twain was listed as a thing you needed to go see with when you're studying the word two. So we went to Twain, we came here, and I want to know what words were built with this pi root. Okay, so you can look, and all these were created from DWO as a pi root. They all have a sense of two somewhere in them. So that pi root helps us find relatives that we might not otherwise find.
Okay.
And yeah, from that, I can do, taking away half that list. Now I can focus on the words that came from that same root, but are modern, and they say 20, twin, twix, 12, twist. They all have a sense of two, but I hear that W in those, and I do not hear them in the word two or two-ness. So I will teach my kids all of these, or show them all, and then study some of them so they get that w, especially 12 and 20, and we'll talk two groups plus, two groups of 10, or a group of 10 plus two more. And then I can get them to know why there's a W. So that W didn't show up for no reason. So sometimes we do that pi root thing just for that reason. Most of the time we ignore pi, I don't want to say ignore pi root because that's really not fair, but we don't put a lot of emphasis on the pi root.
Okay. And so then when you have like the example that you showed of I forget exactly what they were, but the two with the
French.
CUSS, yeah. The two where you ended up seeing that, oh, these came from two different pi roots. Is that what you call like twin bases, or
No,
that's a completely different?
These are the piece that comes in Latin. So when we're in Latin, and I know this is a much deeper class, but I've got some time. Let me go back to this one. So when we're here, I'll pick a different one because it'll be easier. We Videre and we Sus. So on these, right? These two pi roots that we are, sorry, I'm getting my terms mixed up now. I better say, I'll use this one. The four principal parts. We have the second piece and the fourth piece, and you can clearly see they did not come out to be the same spelling in English. This is what you would call twins, or I prefer to call them alternates, because twins can indicate identical or non-identical, and these are so they're alternate spellings from the same place. The same word had two different spellings that we took from Latin. That would be called an alternate or a twin.
Okay, and so probably like is the same thing going on with the PON and POS?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Sometimes,
thank you.
Yes, and sometimes you'll get them that they're the same. Rotare and I think it's tetus, I think. This becomes the suffix. This doesn't become, it just is. And this is what they call a stem suffix. And if you take the ARE, the other suffix, off, you end up with a unitary base of rote, which is part of our words like rotate and whatever, anything that is with rotational. That those you would call a unitary. They're one, they came out after all the stuff was done to them, they came out into modern English with the same spelling, where these came back with different spellings. And beyond that, there's still another one. They're still associated. So we have more spellings that can come.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Heli or Healy. I'm sorry. Did I forget
Yes.
which one?
So you have those two bound bases. So we have VISE. So that would be a bound base for words like vision, right?
Yes.
Am I right? And VIDE would be evidence, evident, and so forth. So I was thinking, if you were to teach that, would you tell them, oh, these are twin bases, and is that necessary to do?
I find it very helpful and necessary with my students, and I work in the elementary and I work with special education students. So they are the bottom 3% of the class of all their classes. I give them all that knowledge. Do I expect them to tell me, oh, we're working with a twin base today or an alternate base? No. But I tell that to them and I then explain and I say, this is a big family. And I will not just give them one word, but I will give them multiple words and multiple examples. I'll give them a word they love, video. Whoops. They love video. And I could talk to them about video being related. And a visor. Why do you wear a visor? And did you see that really cool view? And I will show them these all are all related. We're focusing today on evidence because with evidence, we can see things, we didn't see before. We're seeking to look for things. And I talk about how it's related. But I wouldn't spend a whole lot of time on it, but I also make sure to give them more than the 1 or 2 words we're working on. Because they need them. That it builds connection.
Okay, just one comment. Well, I have been told, actually yesterday, I was told by this researcher and doctor and whatever. She told me that I was just wasting my time teaching them etymology. I teach grade 4. Uh, they love it. Like, I mean, they find it very fascinating to know that they come from Anglo-Saxon and Latin and all that, and we say machine because it's French and all those stuff. And she told me, oh, there is no actual evidence that teaching etymology is effective. And
I have a comment about that.
I guess maybe she's right. Maybe, I don't know, maybe she's right. But at the same time, I think, well, in my experience, like the 4th graders, they enjoy that, and it's kind of like a motivation for them to learn.
Yes.
So, is there a research? Probably not, but at the same time, there is research on morphological on morphology instruction, and at the same time, I know that morphology and etymology are not the same thing.
No.
But at the same time, it's kind of like they're not the same, but you can't separate them. You know what I mean? They go like in tandem. That's how I see it.
They do.
I don't know. I might be wrong.
No, you're not wrong. Paola, go ahead.
It's a commonly asked question, especially because it requires work in terms of acquiring the background as a teacher to bring this to the students at a level, whatever level you're teaching. And depending on if you work with children every single day and what resources you have available and time available, you might want to teach them how to use a Latin dictionary and find those 4 principal parts and learn how to do that. It's very empowering for students, but if you don't have that kind of time, but you can bring it to them so that you build their sense that English is coherent, and that is motivating. And also that if they should choose to study it later in their life, there are tools available. And what you said about motivation is really key, because when they get excited about words, they're going to notice things. And when they notice things, it starts to feel more like, oh, English isn't crazy. It all makes sense. The question you have about research, you can ask Pete Bowers about that. However, my sense of it is that there is some research in it, but it's spotty, because that hasn't been a focus. The focus has been sound symbol. How quickly can we get them decoding? Not how can we create confident readers, writers, and spellers with who can gain meaning and excitement from the study of their language.
Yeah.
And
And also through the process of doing all of this, you're building skills and analytical skills and inquiry skills that will serve them all across their studies, whether they go on to do math, science, English, it doesn't matter. You have to see the really big picture of what this gives students. So when someone says, oh, you're wasting your time because there's no research, you says, well, when there is you could say that if there was a research focus on it and they came up with it doesn't help. And also it depends on how you teach etymology. If you're just saying, go to the dictionary and find the etymology, that's not the same as going through an etymological entry, creating a timeline, looking at how words are related and how words are related to other languages. Like I venture that your first language isn't English, and how much you've gotten from learning about your own language by learning about English.
Yes, my first language is Spanish. I learned English when I was a teenager. I still had my accent. Yes, no, I have learned a lot. Like I still believe that there is some value in teaching kids phoneme graphing correspondence. Especially for multilinguals, I think there is value. I don't know if there is that much value for monolingual English speakers in teaching those sounds and having those sound walls and having those articulation pictures for them. I really, and I don't think that is
is that they learn how to be flexible with those vowels in particular, and to know that some letters we don't pronounce, and there are good reasons for it.
Yes, there is some value on, I think there is value on everything, and each class is different, students are different.
Yeah.
If you wanna find research that validates your viewpoint, you are gonna find it, But is there an actual evidence that works? That's hard to say, because now you have programs like UFly that is everywhere. So is there an actual evidence that the program works? Well, maybe it worked in Florida, in Gainesville for I
something
don't
better.
know, 10 schools, but that doesn't mean that's gonna work in Canada where I live. I mean,
So you have to realize too that research is about always any field, whether it's medical or educational. The research is about 10 to 15 years behind clinical practice, and we are the clinical practitioners in these with structured word inquiry. And first it has to make a buzz, and it has. It's 10 years of making a buzz, but now you're watching people like UFly, or people, but researchers like UFI and all them, they are, when they make their materials, they're incorporating morphology. Sometimes even in letters training, they're more incorporating the etymology. They might not do it well, but they're trying it. They see there's value in it. So eventually, probably 10 years from now, we'll actually have some research.
Actually, I've seen there are some workbooks that were done about 30 or 40 years ago where they a vocabulary book, for example, where they put the 4 principal parts, but they don't say anything about it. There's nothing in the teacher's manual, nothing. It's just information. And you wonder, oh, what a lost opportunity.
Yeah, oh, it's not new. Like, none of this is new. It has been around forever. It's just that the education field has not caught up. And the statement I got from the state of Michigan when I broached this subject with them, and they were bringing science of reading and yada yada, their answer was, we can hang our hat on science of reading, because there's research backing it. We're not saying that other things aren't valuable and maybe even more valuable. We as a state cannot say that SWI is better because there's no research behind it.
Research.
Yeah. It's like, yep, okay, I get it. But yeah, I understand. They're leading a whole state. So if
Mhm.
they lead them on a straw hat and that straw breaks, that's a problem. If they lead them on a straw hat and it works, it'll be amazing. But you know what I mean? It takes a long time.
One of the things that they could do is say, we're beginning to see value in this, so we're going to give our teachers background in it and see what happens when you give the teachers the background. That you don't have a whole curriculum or any of that kind of, or mandated or anything, but give the teachers the background knowledge so they can use it in their classroom.
Yeah. So it's tough. It's tough.
So,
Okay, thank you. So I'll see you later. So yeah, it's good. It's hard. You got to just keep digging in with the doctorate. Just because she has a doctorate doesn't mean he or she knows what they're doing. You know, I've talked to my own physical doctor when I had a problem, and he was wrong because I
Well,
studied it differently. So it's okay. They're
she's
right.
one of these gurus. She's very famous and.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They don't like to be proven wrong. They're the worst. And I don't mean that in a negative way. They just are because they have spent their lives proving phonics works. They can't suddenly flip that. I've talked to lots of doctorates and whatevers and important people, and their answer's the same. Even Microsoft, when they came out with their thing, I was talking with them about putting structured word inquiry when they did their, show it all on the screen in syllables. And I was like, oh, if you did it in morphology, you really go far. And they said, yeah, well, that's a small pocket of the world, and phonics is a big pocket of the world. So we're going with the big pocket. Whatever. Even if it's not right, they're going to do it because it's their money, who they want to attract. So
Yes, that's true. It's a business at the
yes.
end of the day, and all these programs and yeah.
Karen, did you still have some question?
Just word finder. Where do you put the little arrows or whatever after the word?
You like on
'Cause
Word?
there's a key, and I'm not sure how to do it.
Okay, let me bring up Word Searcher first, and then remember to share my screen. Okay, so you're talking this program, correct?
Yes. How does that?
I find that some of them work better. Like if it's the beginning of the word, if I'm on this guy, I'm
Yeah.
gonna caret first. So if I want to say, I'm looking for a word that starts with CUSS. Oh, cussed and
Okay.
cussing, which by the way is not related to discuss. I don't think. I'm trying to remember. We did search that up, and there was like a hint maybe, but I can't remember. So I can find it there. If I want to find out if that ends the word, I put a $sign after it.
Okay.
If I
Okay.
want to, some of these I have a hard time, but matches any member of an enclosed character set.
Yeah.
I want that one, but sometimes I'll do this one where I'll say, I want to know if something ends in ly, but it can be, any vowel can be in front of it.
Okay.
There's that
Mm.
for whatever reason.
Yes.
Or like their choices, I'm looking at VOC, or I'm looking at VOCK. It can either end in a C or a K. Well, invoke and vocals and avocado, right? That's how you use these little systems.
Oh, all right. No, that's super.
Yeah, I have done this one and it was really awesome. I tried to save it and it worked so beautifully, but I don't remember why I was searching it. Or I've done
Okay.
a lot when it matches the middle Y, so the two dots on either side of it, or
Yeah.
an initial Y where it begins with a Y. That's always.
Okay.
And you can cut and paste these. Like I didn't know how to make this without being an
Yeah.
else. So you can copy that and put it up here and say, I want to know if it's that Y, and then paste it and do a Y at the end.
Oh, brilliant. Okay.
So copy and paste whatever you need to.
Yes. Oh, that's super. Thank you.
And then everything over here will not be related to your word. Even if I
Mm.
did CUSS, cussing and cussed, it's up to me to go to Adam Online and see if cussing is related to discuss,
Mm.
right? That's on me to do it. It's tricky because you get here and you're like, wow, all these, oh, except focusing, right? You gotta weed it down. I find it great to copy and paste and make it bigger and start to do my work.
Okay. No, that's brilliant. Thank you.
Welcome. All right, anything else? Okay, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Great
Thank
rest.
you.
Thank you,
Thank you very
Lisa.
much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.